Please note that the presentation is being live streamed and recorded. Hi, good morning. My name is Alyssa Walker. I am your host today in lieu of Vicki still being on sabbatical. We miss her a lot, but we will persevere. Welcome to Data and Donuts. Woo! We made it, guys. We did it. This is a breakfast lecture series that we, not me, but these fine folks have been hosting monthly since 2017. I believe our speaker today has been an integral part of that from the beginning. That's exciting. We showcase government projects and provide a space for government technologists to come together to share knowledge and build connections and eat donuts. Thank you to Lacey, this beautiful space. There's masks available at the front should you need one, and please respect the people who are working around you, although there aren't that many people here today. Summer, you know, it's summer. It's still summer. And we'll have you out here by 10 a.m. Adam, are we doing the survey, or you can skip? Okay, forget it. Don't even do it. We are going to be talking today about context-driven AI. Delivering more relevant, accurate results. If you are someone like me, you hear that and you don't quite know. And that is why John Neill from the County Ballet is going to stand up and explain it all to us in great detail. And I will have John introduce himself and tell you all about himself. Welcome, John.
Thank you. All right, thanks everybody. Glad for the folks that are here in person, and for those of you on the live stream, hey there. First off, I want to kind of a few things. Yes, I've been with Data and Donuts since 2017. Vicki and I and a couple other folks kind of started this thing up as a way to network and meet people. The intent for the speakers has always been kind of secondary, so don't worry about what I have to say. So AI, context-driven AI, what does this mean? What's it all about? And so I'm going to kind of walk through this. A couple of stipulations up front. First off, I'm going to be doing this live, so fingers crossed all this stuff works. I'm going to be changing screens a lot. It worked great when I practiced it, but you never know what's going to happen. I am the 64th speaker for Data and Donuts. So, and that doesn't include School of Data in 2018, I think it was. So there's even more. And believe it or not, I'm the first one to repeat. So, which I think speaks a lot to the depth of the community, right? What I really would like now is to get a robe that has like a 2 on it, like SNL, like 5 timers. And so, hopefully some of our other great speakers will join me in coming back. I know there's a couple who spoke early on that are probably doing really great things that we'd like to have done. Okay, a couple other upfronts. I am definitely standing on the shoulders of others. This presentation and this methodology, I did not make up, right? I've been following, and a long time ago worked with a guy named Bill Schmarzo. He calls himself the Dean of Big Data. He is an amazing guy when it comes to this stuff, because he's very big on results and not about the technology, which is super helpful. And this particular again, methodology, I kind of lifted almost directly from a presentation that he did, but I applied our own stuff to it. So I don't want to make it sound like I came up with this stuff on my own. Go check it out, deanofbigdata.com. He's got some, he's amazing with this, what he's doing. We'll talk a little bit more because I'm using some of his stuff, which you could use too, in the middle of this. I'm not a data scientist, and apparently I'm not a graphic designer. I didn't realize that I used every font and size in this one. But I'm not a data engineer. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not even really a data visualization specialist. What I am is a business analyst, and I consider myself a technology explainer, right? And so part of what I try to do is help non-technical people understand technology. And so hopefully maybe a little bit of that will happen here. Also, and this is super important, the use case I'm using is one that I've been working on for the last few months at ISD. At ISD is the Internal Services Department for the County of Los Angeles. We're an internal service provider for other county departments within the County of LA. I want to make really clear that all the stuff that I've done is with publicly available documents and publicly available data. I am not using any internal documents, any internal data. It's super important. And I think I want to underscore, when you start doing stuff like this, you got to be really careful about what data you load up in there, because I'm using a publicly available Gen AI tool. Just be careful, right? Think twice before you load up data. And it's a potential leak that I think most organizations need to be careful of. So I want to make sure, if there's anybody from ISD watching, this is all public data. No internal LA County or internal services data was used. Also, I'm not a technologist. We're not going to be doing anything about RAGs, LLMs, neural networks. All that stuff, people get confused when you hear about it. That's okay. We're going to use the tool as a business user, not as a technology person. Also, I asked Gemini and I asked ChatGPT to do a self-portrait, and those 4 images are what they came up with. I find it kind of interesting that these 2 different models came up with different pictures, but they look very similar, huh? So kind of interesting. And when I ask Gemini, which is the tool I'm going to be using to do a self-portrait, this is what it thinks it looks like. So there we go. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about, and again, this is directly from Mr. Schmarzo, but let's talk about the Gen AI business model. First off, a lot of times, AI, we need a strategy. What you really need is a business strategy that leverages and exploits AI. And we're at this inflection point. A lot of what people use AI for now is what we like productivity tools. And I'll give you an example of that. But this inflection point is around using AI as an innovation tool, as a way to get more information out of your organization. And I'll give you an example of that. So some of the prompts, so your typical productivity prompts are, hey, write me a memo, summarize my emails, do a weekly report, review this policy document and summarize, compare this to some other document. That really, really valuable tools. Innovation prompts are more around these areas of business optimization. What steps can we take to streamline our processes, to streamline our documentation? Design a new workflow for a particular process in our organization. Now one of these, so one of the challenges we have with working in public sector is our motives are not profit motives, right? Our stuff is more around, we're not building new markets, although maybe we should in some respects. So this idea of enhanced competitiveness is really around how can we leverage emerging trends to serve the public better, right? And then cultural empowerment, develop training programs so we can be better at using AI or using data. In fact, I've used this internally to build a data literacy program, which, that's the easy part. Now it's actually implementing. So that gives you an idea of kind of what we're going to be doing, put some context around what we're going to be doing, which is kind of more business innovation than it is productivity stuff, right? All right, so a little bit of nerd stuff, though. Let's talk about one kind of technical aspect. That's called the context window. What is the context window? Well, I'm going to be using, in this case, Gemini. You could also use ChatGPT. You could use the other tools, Copilot, and so on. The context window basically is how much data can you stick in your queries and in your communications with it before it has to chunk it up and create a different set of sessions within its model to answer your question. So I'm going to be loading a bunch of documents in. So I want a big context window because I want it to be able to handle all this data at once. So basically, the context window. So I'm going to be using Gemini. It has a 1 million token context window. What are tokens? Tokens are basically words, can sometimes be, punctuation, whatever. But ultimately, that kind of translates down to how many pages can I stick in there, right? So basically for 1 million lines, you can handle about 1,500 pages of text and 30,000 lines of code. You can see the other models here, kind of what they have. Most of these are probably good enough for what most people will do. I'm using Gemini. One of the things that this process that we're going to go through does is try to avoid things like hallucinations, right? You hear about hallucinations. It's coming up with all these crazy, stuff. One of the ways you avoid that is, number one, we're going to drive our conversation by loading up documents. And because of the fact that the data is all in one context window, it doesn't have to go off into a different zone to do its work. It doesn't break it. I mean, I'm being very technical here, right? Zones and stuff. That's not really what's happening, but we don't care. The key thing is we want to be able to do this process in one chunk. All right, so this is the procedure. And again, I'm going to repeat, thank you, Bill Schmarzo. This is his procedure that I have modified, right? So the idea here is we're going to be using a Gemini window and start asking it questions, right? The first thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to define the context and our intent. So we'll make a statement that summarizes, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Then we're going to upload a bunch of documents, right? So how many millions and millions and millions of documents has your standard, Gen AI model ingested and has information on? There's tens of millions of them. I don't want tens of millions of them. I don't want to know about, the information on, whatever, social media stuff or whatever. I want to hone in on some very specific stuff. So I'm going to drive what we're trying to do by uploading specific documents. Then we're going to establish a narrative. And what this does is it creates sort of a flow of how we want to interact with the model. And in this case, we're going to use some prompts that I got from Bill Schmarzo. Plus, he also, and this was kind of like a moments, was he uploaded an entire book on the Socratic method. If you ever took philosophy classes or learned about how Socrates, questioned his students and asked a bunch of questions. So there's an entire set of questions related to how to query and get information out, right? So we're going to do that. We're going to do a little bit of exploration, and then we're going to leverage persona-based queries, and you'll see what that looks like. This says ChatGPT. We're going to be using Gemini, obviously. But the idea is act as a data scientist, act as a manager of operations, and maybe also define the audience. Explain large language models to third graders, whatever. So this is not groundbreaking, but this idea of act as and here's my audience is a very powerful tool. And then finally, we're going to summarize, and at the end here, we're going to do some prompts and see what we can do. Okay, here we go. So our first step, let me do this. And there we go. Okay, so our first step is to define the context. So my statement here is we want to help LA County ISD executives and managers better understand their services and rates and help improve service delivery and customer satisfaction, right? So I'm setting the tone, right? Yeah, we're in step one, right? So I'm going to keep this off because I have to go back and forth. Yeah, thank you. So let's go here. You don't really want to watch me type. So I put this in. And also, if you notice, I have some general categories that we put in here. And I'll explain where those came from in just a second. But I'm just going to do this. copy and go over here. Oh, this is what Gemini thinks data and donuts looks like, by the way. Okay, so I'm going to put this in, and the thing is, it's going to process this and start trying to answer my question, and which is great. I don't really care what it has to say quite yet, and so here's the objective, and here it came up with a framework. It talks about the different categories and the metrics you might want to use. Okay. And I don't really care yet about what it has to say, but there's that. Okay, so then right here. Okay, so we've defined the context. Next, let's upload some documents. So we're going to basically add relevant files. This is how we give the context. So I'm going to use this phrase in the wrong way, but we're training Gemini to do what we want it to do. This is not training in the data science sense, right? It's not training a model per se, but it is training. We're basically driving it down a series of questions to get where we want to go. So the main document that I'm going to use is the 2526 Customer Rate Handbook from ISD. This is publicly available out on the ISD's website. It has a bunch of information in it about rate setting. It has all of our different services, and it has the objectives. It has a bunch of stuff in it, right? So we're gonna use this to key off of. So I'm going to go over here, and wait, let's see. I gotta be able to do this. There we go. So I'm gonna upload the rate handbook. So the other documents that I'm going to load up are some service delivery frameworks. Like I said, I was given this task as to help come up with service delivery metrics by our chief deputy. And he wanted me to go through and learn frameworks and figure all this stuff. So of course I used AI to help me do all this stuff. So I have some delivery frameworks. Also, I have a document called the internal services metrics. So, well, here, I'll tell you what, let me just do it. I'm gonna load, let me just do this there. So I'm going to load our customer rate handbook in here, right? And so it's loaded it up. I'm also going to load up this internal service. Oops, come on now. This is the part that was always fun. Yeah, we're going to do our common service delivery frameworks, and we're going to do our internal government metrics. Okay, so I'm gonna, it's loading them up now. Hopefully this is not an image. There we go. And I'm going to tell it, use these uploaded files to guide your analysis and additional assessment, right? To give our reliable and accurate results related to service delivery metrics for LA County's Internal Services Department. We will be specifically focusing on the customer rate handbook, right? I'm giving it instructions for what to do. And it's going to go. Now, when I first started this process, one of the things that I did was I said, hey, let's talk about service delivery for government agencies, right? Well, the problem is that most government agencies, when you ask them about service delivery, they think you're talking about service delivery for, like delivering services to constituents. How well do you providing, different things like welfare and probation, all that stuff. How are you delivering those services? Well, this is not what my department does. My department is an internal service provider, right? And so one of the things that I had to do was to say, let's focus on internal service providers and not just general ones, right? So if you notice, it has come up with a bunch of stuff based on the documents I uploaded. Again, the challenge I ran into was that the metrics that it gave me were generic, right? It was general metrics you might want to use. So we're there. We've got our documents loaded. The next thing is I talked about defining the narrative, right? So So we're going to establish a narrative. This is creating a logical exploration flow, leveraging the Socratic method and the 9 categories of Gen A prompts. So the top one is straight off of Thank You, Socrates. And you can see what these are as far as the types of questions, way you would query stuff, right? And so I'm going to load this in. These books are completely. There we go. Oops, let's take it. I got to find my window here. So we've got our innovation prompts, Socratic questions. Just to give you an idea, the art of Socratic. I'm going to pull it up really quick. So this is a book, right? It's a book that I got off online on how to reason, right? So perfect. And so let's go here. I'm going to get these 3, the prompts, except I got to get here. This was the part that I was always worried about. So let's get, if I can do this, right? Oops, nope. Here we go. Okay. So we're going to load these up, and now we're going to tell it use the uploaded materials to guide our exploration and help validate what we're doing. And these are the types of questions that Socrates asked. So we're going to go here. And what it's now going to do is actually it's going to start generating questions and stuff around the data I've just uploaded. Again, I'm not quite ready for the next step is going to be we're going to start to explore this data. But we'll give it a sec to upload. And so you can see, this is summarizing what the Socratic method is. Really good information, something that maybe you might want to know. In case you were wondering, Socratic questioning is a disciplined form of questioning to pursue thought in many directions for many purposes, right? So this gives you a whole bunch of stuff on how that works. Again, I'm not particularly interested in that for the purposes of what we're doing, but so there's that. So now we're going to start exploring what we have, right? So our first couple questions are going to be kind of productivity questions. We're going to get insights into this rate handbook. It's 60 pages long. So I'm going to go over here and say, oops, that's right. I can't do it there. Hang on. Got to go here. Okay. So let's start finding out about ISD, right? I want to reiterate, this is nothing internal, right? So based on the rate handbook, what are ISD's primary lines of business? So you could probably get this just by reading the document, but I'm lazy. So here are our lines of business. Basically, these are the service areas within ISD. We do admin and finance. We have an energy and environmental services group. We have ITS, the largest group within the organization. We have a purchasing and contracting services, which I now reporting to, and we have an operations service, which does all kinds of facilities management, fleet services, landscaping, all kinds of crazy stuff. Okay, so now, let's say what services does each of these provide? And I'm going to ask it to give it to me in a table format because it's easier to do. Right? So let's see what it comes up with this. And again, what we're doing now is we're just doing some basic exploration. So here's the line of business. Here's the service they provide. I use this a lot just to get some basic information on what we do and where it is. Okay, that's good. So now, okay. So how many specific services do we bill for? So my logic here was, if I want to do service delivery metrics, I need to know what services we provide, right? So this gives you a good idea. So based on this document. We have over 100 specific services, 75 of those in ITS. Some other ones. When I first asked this question, it said there's too many. You'd have to go into a lot of detail. I'm like, well, then go into the detail, and it did. So sometimes it's a little lazy. Okay, so now I want to deliver to my boss what he asked for, which is develop service delivery metrics for each service, organize these by the operations, and for each metric, show what data I need to do it, right? So this was, at the end of the day, this is what I was tasked to do. Well, not really. It was to come up with some ideas for service delivery metrics, but this is the main key thing I was supposed to work on. So, okay. So here it is, right? So, you know what, and here's what I want to do too. Hang on, let me do this, because this is kind of hard to see. So, let's go here. Hang on 1 second. I need to use Canvas and say, no, go away. I want to display as a web. All right. If your career was coding HTML, find another career. So yeah, well, this will take a second. But the idea behind this is, if I just say, hey, Gemini, ChatGPT, develop service delivery metrics, you're going to get stuff all over the place, right? And this is supposed to be in Canvas. Hang on, sorry. Let me do this. I knew this would happen when I decided to do this live. Okay, so it's gonna do it. But yeah, this is what I mean by context-driven AI, right? We have basically framed what we want to do within this chat tool, right? And as a result, so here we go. Okay, this is something I can present, right? So here's the service delivery metrics for each of it. And if you notice, I had loaded up these categories. So it basically does these 4 key dimensions: efficiency metrics, effectiveness metrics, quality, and customer satisfaction. And so here we go. For customer assistance, we need average handle time. This is where I get the data, right? So each one of these general services that we provide, it tells me what metric we use to measure efficiency, effectiveness, quality, and customer satisfaction, right? This was a huge undertaking for me prior to this, right? Which is what I had been doing in my organization. I was helping develop, at that time we called it speed, reliability, value. Those were the major kind of categories. But this brings you to the point where you can now do even more stuff with it. But it was just a lot of work. So that's the main gist of what I was trying to accomplish, right? So now, that's great. Now let's take it to the next step. First of all, let me just see where I am on time. So that's the key of what this is. And, okay, 9:30. Okay, good. So now I'm going to start doing some persona-driven questioning, right? Act as a data scientist, right? I want to know what data science, machine learning, deep learning use cases that we can use to optimize these business processes. In fact, I'm going to take operational out, because I think the last time I did it, it focused on operations, which I didn't want it to do. Okay, we'll find out. Okay, so we're going to go here, and we are going to act as a data scientist. I meant to do this at the beginning. We'll let it do its thing. It takes a minute for it to process, but pretty snappy, right? Hello, as a data scientist, here are different use cases for data science within my organization. Now, have we solved this problem? Have we done the data science? No. But we know what we want to look at. So let me just pull this up also as a web page. and hopefully it will be a little bit easier for us to read. And remember, this is not pre-programmed, right? I'm just doing this on the fly. While it's building that, let's look at the next question I'm going to ask. Actually, I'm going to skip over. I know we are in a strategic planning process within our current organization right now called ISD Forward, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But okay, so this is a document I can use to have a discussion with my organizations to say, here's the data science we can do, right? So intelligent ticket routing is a great one, right? So and what we need is, here's the data I need for it. I didn't ask it what actual model to use, but here's, predictive maintenance. In fact, I wanted to find the one around, so this is one, we deliver mail to our internal county departments. So one of the opportunities there is to do fleet route optimization. This is not a groundbreaking use case. We use it every day on when you drive here, or if you walk here or ride your bike and use Waze. So anyways, once again, this gives us a topic for conversation. Okay, so I'm going to do one more. So the thing that I'm missing here is actual data, right? I mean, we're using external stuff, but to be really useful, I really need a lot of this external data. But to give you an example, so here's an interesting question I want to ask. So times are tough, right? And the county is expecting to do some downsizing based on a bunch of different factors. So what impact would budget cuts have on our service delivery, right? So now we're going beyond just analyze this document. This is saying, hey, let's do some more driven conversation around what sorts of things we need to do, right? So did I do the right? Oh yeah, here we go. Sorry. So hang on. I don't think it took my. Let me try this again. It felt like it answered the previous question. So and while it's doing that, let me queue up the next question. So the other thing I'm going to ask is, how do I mitigate these risks? Right, budget cuts. So it talks about downsizing would impact service delivery. So these are the areas that budget cuts and staffing cuts, or not increasing staffing, would have, right? And again, I apologize, I'm flipping through this really quick, but unless you're really interested in the nitty-gritty details, what I like also is, okay, well, help me. How do I mitigate this, right? And the whole point of this is to have a conversation, right? So I'm going to do one more of these. And I'm also going to show you the result of something. I'm not going to have it actually do it because it takes a while. So here's the strategies you can employ to mitigate risks of budget cuts and employee downsizing, right? So automating critical services, enhancing communication, improving your transparency, more self-service within the organization, right? And hey, leverage data for strategic decision-making. That's welcome to my world. That's what I'm trying to help us do, right? So that gives you that idea. Let's see, so I'm going to do one more of these. So here's a topical one. What areas of ISD services might be impacted by increased tariffs, right? So I think this will give you an idea of that I'm not getting hallucinated answers, right? The reason why I'm not getting that is because, once again, I feel like it answered the, let me try that again. This is, we're not doing anything, incredibly out of the box. But we are driving our answers based on a very specific set. We're providing context. That's why it's called context-driven AI. We're not saying go out to the big wide world. You know, we're saying use these documents. Now it's also using. I mean, we're talking about tariffs, right? So it's got to know what kind of service we provide, right? So, so what areas are going to be most impacted in my organization by an increase in tariffs? You know, cost of goods procured is going to go up, right? So, and I love this. You see services that rely on third-party contractors, such as technical equipment maintenance, TEMS. TEMS is this ISD-specific contract that we use for technical stuff. And so, you know, I love the fact that it answered with that as an example, right? That shows that it's not just giving me la-la answers, right? So I'll tell you what, that basically is the summation. Let me go here. What else did I have? I got this, okay. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna wrap up really quick, but we're gonna ask some questions here in a sec. So what's next, right? Here's the thing. This is using external stuff, external data, external documents, and there's a lot more I could do, right? The rate setting process is dictated by several key documents, like the county fiscal manual, which by the way is publicly available, by state laws, which are publicly available, by some federal laws, which are publicly available. So then if we wanted to talk about improving the rate setting process, you know, we could do that. There was one more question I wanted to ask it, and then what I'd like to do is think about this while I'm doing this, is what questions did I miss, right? What do you think? But let me see, did I type it in here? Let me just see if I think it's in my, here we go. I'm gonna ask this one last question, and that is, what questions should I ask about this to improve the rate handbook for clarity and so on? And this is where it's going to go back, I hope, at least it did when I did it last time, and utilize the Socratic method, right? And say, so I love this. You should ask questions that prove clarity and usefulness from the perspective of your customers. The goal is to make the document transparent, predictable, and equitable, as that's the state of objectives, right? So questions to ask. And it has a list, let's see. Does a handbook provide enough information for your customer to reasonably anticipate their costs? So these are things that we can ask to help improve it, right? So probably more there. Okay, so that essentially in a nutshell is what I wanted to present to you. I hope it was useful and meaningful. Here's my question. Anybody have an idea for a question that we want to ask it now that I've got it all ready to go? You want to? It could be, well, I mean, it would be helpful if it was related to to this at hand, but yes. Which one do you want to see? Yeah, here. Was it? Oh, related to the tariffs? Okay. 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 Yes. Okay. So yeah, I think the idea behind this is that, you know, yeah, these are examples, right, that I wanted to give. So I have other questions I could ask, but does anybody have a thought? I mean, you want to try asking a question about our rates, about LA County services? Yes. I can tell you that we don't have customer satisfaction numbers, but let's just ask it. This is why I cut and pasted everything, by the way. So does it talk about customer satisfaction? So I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. Yeah. So there you go. This is more about the objectives and methodology for how rates are set. So, yes? Are there services in ISD that could benefit from consolidation? And is that good enough? Close enough? Is that? I don't know how to spell either, do I?
That's AI too. It's helping.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Rationalization. Good enough. It should know what I'm talking about. Let's find out. That's a great question, right? So the example or the presentation that I saw was based on crop rotations in Iowa, right? That was the example, and I thought I can use this with our own areas, right? And so I think I would challenge you to think the same way. What stuff in your organization that could you use, right? Again, my next steps here are all about loading data and actually asking it to do some more detailed analysis and possibly do the data science that's involved. So it looks like, yes, there are. There's, and that's funny. So this is one I'm aware of. Both the Internet Development Division and Customer Applications branch provide application support. I think there's a discussion ongoing within our ITS organization to do exactly that, right? So there's an example. So the answer is yes. And again, I hope that some of my peers are watching, because I would love to expand on them with all this stuff. This exploration is kind of a recent thing for me. So, and one other thing also, I'm going to go back here to this. What I really want is, I want this experience and this interface, but I want it inside the four walls of LA County, right? So, I know the county uses various tools. I don't know that this exists. I am talking to several of our partners, but if you want to know the use case, partners, if you're watching, this is what I want to do, right? And is it scalable out to the entire county? I don't know. This is more of a knowledge workers tool, right? It's not really we're not scaling this out to, chatbots and whatever. This is something that helps data people, developers, business analysts, project managers, and so on to get insight. And the more data you give it, the better it is, the more context it drives. And I'd like to be I know of specific documents that are inside that I cannot use here. I don't want to use on an external tool, but I'd love to use it internally. So, so that's it. Any other questions before we finish up?